Senator Sanders isn't a Democrat, he's an ideologue. And we've got to get practical.
Does practical mean that the 89 or so million people who are uninsured or underinsured in this country continue to suffer? Does being practical mean that we don't take steps in this country to deal with climate chaos and bring world leaders to bear? Does being practical mean that we continue to prop up a legal system that is unjust in every stretch of the imagination, that bears its weight down on black men and black women, and then by extension, if you are Hispanic or indigenous or poor? Does being practical mean that we don't say to the American people that you deserve better than what you are getting?
So among the many issues with the moderate Democrat approach to governing the United States is that really they're just outdated. The way that they do things is no longer needed. They came along when things were pretty decent in the economy. You know, things were pretty level. The United States was in a good position worldwide. The Republican Party had yet to go full-blown nuts and crazy. They were already there, but they had yet to go full-blown psycho. But see, the moderate Democrat approach allowed them to go into that full-blown psycho, to where now Donald Trump is the most popular political figure in the country, which is ridiculous, but that's just what it is.
That's not the kind of practicality we want. Does practical mean that you hold fundraisers and wine caves with Swarovski crystals with billionaires who want to control this system? Does practical mean we continue to go with the status quo while 500,000 people sleep on the streets at night? That's not practicality. So with all due respect to Mr. Carville, what the American people in this country need, they need somebody that is unabashed and that has the courage and the conviction to stand up for them and to call out the rigging of this system.
That is what the moderate Democrat approach has led to. It's led to an out-of-control Republican Party, as well as the opposition party, which is supposed to be the Democrats, completely lacking the will to get anything done at all.
In order to get to a revolution, you've got to take steps. You've got to get to a practical place to make those changes.
Stephanie, the elites in 1930 said the same thing about FDR. And he said, "I welcome your hatred." These are the same people that if the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was still alive, when he stood up before he was gunned down and he said to this country, he said the evils of this country: militarism, materialism, poverty, and racism. Those are those same people. So now if President FDR had listened to those people, or if the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King had listened to those people, we would not progress as a nation. So every generation, we got the naysayers, baby.
I mean, we talk about this here all the time. How is it that the Biden administration isn't just axing student loan debt? Because it's to protect the banks. That's what it is. It's just to protect the banks, because they pretend like, well, not the Biden administration, but kind of the conservative argument against getting rid of student loan debt is that, well, it'll raise taxes. Okay, well, then legalize marijuana, collect those taxes, and raise taxes on billionaires. Voila. The rest of that gap can afford the loss. Cut the military budget a little bit. These are easy fixes, but it's just about protecting the banks. However, if Joe Biden were to do things like, I don't know, eliminate just half of student loan debt, that would make him a legend. And if he got rid of all of it, that would make him a super legend, because that would transform tens of millions of people's lives. It would put so much money into people's pockets who are just basically slaves to paying their student loan debt. Even doctors and lawyers never pay off that debt because they owe so much, and they just end up paying the interest. He won't do that for the sake of his own popularity. That's what's wrong with the moderate Democrat approach.
What people need is to be able to call upon somebody that's not going to capitulate. Stephanie, why can't we have both? I reject, and so do the American people, the whole notion that you cannot say to a system that it must change and also push a dream and a vision that is bigger than what we have right now. Who wants somebody that's saying to the workaday people of this nation, I'm going to run for office, but you only going to get more of the same?
The best way to sum up the moderate Democrat approach is by a letter that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote in 1963 from a Birmingham jail. You could check that out online, and I'll just read half of it now. And it goes, "First, I must confess that over the last few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically feels he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time and who constantly advises the Negro to wait until a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection.